It's a raucous scene at the Kentucky State Capitol building in Frankfort. Hundreds of protesters are gathered outside. Dozens more take to the gallery of the legislature, screaming at and threatening lawmakers who are forced to pause their session while police officers calmly and peacefully remove the disorderly crowd. Undaunted, the legislature finalizes its lopsided vote to override its governor's veto and enact Senate Bill 150. The bill protects children from dangerous, invasive, and life-altering so-called gender transition procedures, and it ensures that parents have access and accountability in their kids' schools. Despite the hostile opposition, the vote officially makes Kentucky one of many states to have adopted similar protections by the close of the spring 2023 legislative season. Kentucky wasn't the first, and won't be the last, to stand up to highly vocal yet deeply misguided proponents of gender ideology. My name is Tyson Langhofer. I'm Senior Counsel and Director of the Center for Academic Freedom at Alliance Defending Freedom. When historians look back on this moment, they're going to note the courageous actions of the Kentucky legislature, but they'll also do well to highlight another episode that unfolded in Kentucky. Starting in 2017, then University of Louisville professor Dr. Allan Josephson began sounding the alarm that radical ideology was supplanting sound medicine in the diagnosis and treatment of young people struggling with gender dysphoria. Dr. Josephson had served as the chief of the Division of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Psychology at University of Louisville since 2003. As an expert in child psychiatry and family therapy, Dr. Josephson saw firsthand that when ideology replaces reality, vulnerable children pay a lasting price. That's why Dr. Josephson raised his concerns on his own time on a Heritage Foundation panel. Activists at the university responded by embarking on an all-out campaign to discredit and fire Dr. Josephson, to cancel him. Incensed that he would question the rapidly entrenching orthodoxy, activists, including a few faculty in Dr. Josephson's own division, were doubly motivated once they found out that he was an expert witness in a federal court case challenging a public school's common sense and long-accepted policy of having different bathrooms for boys and girls. Unfortunately, activists were successful in their effort to boot Dr. Josephson from U of L's campus. He was eventually fired for his views in 2019. But although they took away his job, they were unable to silence the power of the truths he was espousing, because truth will ultimately prevail. In late 2022, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit affirmed Dr. Josephson's position in the federal case in which he served as an expert witness, agreeing with him that sex is a meaningful category and that schools could strike a balance for the interests of all students, including those who identified as the opposite sex, without doing away with that important distinction. Meanwhile, as states like Kentucky take action to protect children against harmful gender theory, dominoes are beginning to fall to expose the corruption of the highly profitable gender clinic industry. In the summer of 2022, England's National Health Service was forced to close the country's only public gender clinic that specialized in puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children. Also in 2022, journalists shed light on the fact that high-profile American institutions, including Boston Children's Hospital and Vanderbilt, were inflicting these invasive hormonal and surgical interventions on children as young as 13 years old without their parents' permission, while starting toddlers as young as 2 years old on the path toward embracing a transgender identity. Finally, in early 2023, longtime case manager Jamie Reed blew the whistle on her former employer. In a public post, Reed laid bare the center's utter lack of protocols for screening, diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up of the children who had been to the center, as well as what Reed blasted as its lack of regard for the rights of parents. We have a long way to go in protecting vulnerable children from the devastating effects of radical gender ideology. And we have a long way to go in safeguarding the fundamental rights of parents to oversee the education and upbringing of their own children. But when we do achieve these desperately needed goals, we'll have courageous people like Dr. Josephson to thank. Dr. Josephson knew the risk he was taking by speaking out for what he knew to be right. He chose courage over fear. Would you do the same?